Welcome again to our September 3rd Thursday. Thank you all for being here tonight. Welcome also to those of you who are joining us on YouTube live stream. Tonight we'll be talking all about building a writing community. And I do want to say up top that one of our panelists for tonight, Grant Faulkner, wasn't able to make it due to being under the weather. So we do want to wish him a speedy recovery. But luckily, we didn't have to look too far to find someone who could step in and who has a lot to contribute to this conversation. And I'll introduce him in a minute. But first, I want to introduce our first panelist, who is Cloud. Cloud Delfina Cardona is an artist and writer from San Antonio, Texas. She is the author of What Remains and the forthcoming poetry collection, The Past is a Jean Jacket, winner of the Hub City BIPOC Poetry Series. Cardona is the co-founder of Infrarrealista Review, a literary nonprofit that publishes Texan voices. She has received editorial fellowships from Macmillan in collaboration with Latinx in Publishing and Texas State University's Center for the Study of the Southwest. Cardona has been a workshop participant at Tin House and Macondo's writing workshop. Their editorial work has received attention from Ramezcla, Vice, and the San Antonio Current. Her poetry can be found in Prairie Schooner, The Boiler, the Los Angeles Review, and more, and she currently works as the marketing coordinator at Gemini Inc. Thank you so much for joining us, Cloud.
Thank you for having me.
And our next panelist is filling in for Grant. This is J. Evan Parks. You may recognize him. J. Evan Parks is a writer and creative currently living in Austin, Texas, where he works as the Director of Member Services and Digital Content for the Writers League of Texas. He's a graduate from the University of Texas at Austin, where he received a double major in English and Japanese and a certificate in creative writing. He has published several mysteries for the public access TTRPG, one through the game's publisher, The Gauntlet, and many more by himself or as part of a community-organized anthologies. He is also the co-organizer of the Title Writing Group, organizer of the Stray Signals Anthology, co-organizer of the La Fresca Mall Directory, and a contributor to the forthcoming Sprigs and Kindling zine issue #1. Finally, he is hard at work writing his own game, Ritual Deck. Thanks for joining us, Evan.
I'm glad to be here.
And our third panelist is Annar. Annar Veröld is a Honduran-American writer and the executive director of the small women-led press Host Publications. She proudly co-founded and curates the feminist reading series I Scream Social and co-hosts the literary podcast The Host Dispatch. When not making books or attending readings, you can find her performing with the Austin Civic Wind Ensemble. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Annar.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so there's so much I want to cover with you all. I couldn't stop writing questions as I was thinking about this conversation. So I definitely want to dive in. I also want to let our audience know that they're welcome to submit questions also. If at any point a question comes up, you can go ahead and put it in the Q&A box, and you can find that at the bottom of your screen. And we will take some time towards the end of the program to go through some questions that are there. So to get us started, I'd love to hear from each of you what your relationship was to the writing community prior to starting your own organization. What prompted you to kind of shift into DIY mode? How did you get the idea to start something, and how did you decide to go for it? Annar, I'd love to start with you if that's okay.
Absolutely. I will prompt this with being that with every vision, there might require a little bit of delusion. And I kicked Ice Cream Social off 9 years ago, 10 years next summer. And I was very young. I was a very young 23. And I remember before Malvern Books opened up here in Austin, Texas, there was this incredible bookstore that sold only small independent presses, and it was mostly poetry and fiction. Huge wall of poetry. And I remember like I couldn't find community. I would go to these open mics around town. I would join writers groups, and I would be a reader for my university lit mag, and I just felt so alien. And I was hired to be a bookseller at Malvern, and I felt really comfortable there. My colleagues were really cool and introduced me to literature that then shaped me. I always say that I like came of age in that space. And I just remember, I'd work nights, and the events were these really stuffy academic events that felt just really stiff and sterile. And they didn't leave room for people to network, to get to know each other. And I was like, where's all, Austin is like full of like just these like cool young people. Where are they? I know they read. Um, and yeah, I was just kind of like, how can I get like and I'm not a cool girl, you guys. I am a big nerd. I was like, how do I get all these cool hot girls um to come and hang out with me? And yeah, and I was just like, it was hot, it was summertime. I was like, I'll throw like an ice cream party, and it'll be a feminist reading series, and we'll feature women writers, and I'll get to meet all the cool girls of my dreams. And yeah, that's kind of how this moment of like enthusiasm and excitement to build something kind of spawned. And I had this really awesome colleague who then became my co-host, Chandra Abigail Madha. And yeah, and together we were like, let's do 3 of these maybe. Let's just see if anyone will show up. And it turned out to be something that resonated with a lot of other people, and grew into something really special.
Oh, wow. I've not heard the origin story, so that was really special to hear. Thank you for sharing. Cloud, could you let us know the origin story of your organization?
Yeah, so I started Infrarrealista review with my bestie, Juanias Juanios back in 2019. We were both at the Texas State MFA program together. And prior to this, I had been in the zine world in San Antonio for a few years, like since 2013. I had a zine called Chiflada Zine, and it was geared towards like publishing Latinas. We had like a print version and also an online like a website where we did like playlist and um poetry, like fiction, like anything basically. We kind of modeled ourselves after Rookie Mag. So we kind of wanted like this like, um just like Tumblr girl kind of feeling to our website and our whole like idea. And I co-founded that with Laura Valdez. And so that spirit, like, went on for a few years. I helped organize the San Antonio Zine Fest, did like zine parties at different locations in San Antonio, including La Botanica, which was a queer vegan bar that no longer exists anymore. But that was kind of the world that I was in. And, being in the MFA program, kind of learning about like literary journals and publishing at large. I think me and my friends, my, other Chicana friends in the program got like disillusioned by um, the kind of the illusion of inclusion, I think, in a lot of like journals and a lot of like mastheads that didn't reflect what they were like promoting online was like, we want your voices, but none of the editors reflected that. And so growing up in San Antonio, there's a really big poetry scene here. My father is a Chicano poet, so I kind of grew up in that world. So I know that there's like a lot of literature here, and just looking at like a lot of the Southwestern journals, and programming, it just didn't reflect the world that I knew. And so me and Wanya came together and we were like, let's just like start our own thing, like where we kind of disregard, like, we don't put emphasis on people's previous publications. Like we just want good work. And we don't want to like, I guess be elitist about like who we choose or like put too much emphasis on that. And so we started like our first official launch was March 2020, the cursed AWP in San Antonio, which I really hope we get a redo soon. But we had like a launch party there. It was like the week before lockdown, and that was when we launched our first issue and started this community of like kind of selfishly to like continue writing within our own friend group, post graduation and MFA. It's so hard to like keep that up. And so we wanted to like create a collective that would, push ourselves to like, okay, like let's write, let's publish, like let's keep on doing this and getting together. And also expand that to like the people that we know, the friends that we know, and encourage them to submit work to us. And just publishing their work is I discovered was such a good feeling, and that's kind of motivated us since then.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Thank you. Um, yeah, I love that you saw a need for something and you're like, why not? Why not me? Evan, what about you?
Yeah, I come at this. I'm coming at this question from a few different angles. And one, my day job hat of working at the Writers League, I came into this organization. I clearly did not make it. It is over 40 years old. But as I came into this role, it helped me open my eyes to like um, there's just such a large amount of writers out there, especially in Texas. But even as we've gone online and more people have come to Writers League programming outside of Texas, as you might have seen some people checking in this chat box earlier, like there's a real want for community and programming. And it made me realize like people need to advocate for these writers to connect with one another. And that became one of the things I wanted to do with the Writers League. Which in what I did, I helped push for more ways to connect online as I stepped into this role in 2020. So it started with monthly meetups online and then shifted into more focused programming for members about stuff like that. But even outside of the Writers League, I found post graduation, entering into my adult life, a lot of people don't tell you how much things kind of slow down while also speeding up. And as that happened, my own writing kind of floundered, and I just couldn't find myself having any motivation to do anything. I just couldn't work. And as I started speaking to more writers like that, we decided let's just pick a time. We'll meet up at a coffee shop and we'll just write there. And that kind of started exploding out into a larger group that we create a monthly invite and send it out to our friends, and those friends would tell other people, and then suddenly we were just mass bombing this coffee shop without warning to take over their entire inside of just to sit there and write. And our only promise was to work on something related to your writing. You don't even have to write, you just have to show up for no less than 1 hour, but no more than 3. And we've been going strong for coming up on a year now. And I'm really, really proud that that to see these people showing up and wanting to get work done. And I've gotten back into my own writing, and that long list of projects that I've been a part of or started working on have only become possible because I've been able to claw out this time, and other people have been keeping me accountable for that time. This is a very selfish reason, but I think it came out good.
Yeah, give us a little bit of insight into the name. title.
Yeah. The story was when it became clear that we wanted it to be a group. I'm referring to we as in the other writer is my coworker Laura Arnold, who may or may not be tuned in as well. Sarah's always invited to the writers group, and we keep trying to pressure her to show up. But we came up with the idea of like, what if the real name of our organization was a secret until a period of time, uh, where the real name is title by title or title. But in every invite, Laura and myself would pick a book off our shelves and surprise each other with it, mash up the names and covers into a kind of DIY invite and send that around to everyone. So we've come up with things such as the Master Poetic and Commander Edda writing group, or Barayar. Oh, I can't remember it. It's just like we're both like really into genre and to finding niche books. So we just keep giving each other harder and harder titles to mash up. And no one has asked us questions about it in the group. They just kind of accepted that as a natural part of the group.
I love it. And so I want to also ask, when you think about things like scope and mission, did you always have a sense of what you wanted your organization to accomplish and who you wanted it to serve, or has that scope and mission kind of changed over time? And are there models you looked to as you kind of grew? Cloud, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to that DIY spirit was a big part of that. Big influence on our work. Also, Infrarrealistas, where we got our name from, was a group in the 60s, 70s in Mexico. If you've read The Savage Detectives, it's basically about the Infrarrealistas, and they were like basically a group of like punk poets who decided that they didn't want to be career poets and kind of thought that was lame. And obviously Bolaño was like the big name from that group, and obviously he's published. All of them went on to publish except for one who like stayed true to his I'm never going to be published, kind of ethos. But so we were inspired by that kind of spirit. Um, Maybe not that extreme, but definitely just like, the punk DIY kind of communal spirit that I think uh is very alive in San Antonio and South Texas, especially in like Chicanx communities, just the supporting of each other, um, the oral histories. So those were the kind of models that we were looking at. In our vision, always from the start was like, okay, we want to uplift and publish Texan writers. We don't want to like dismiss anyone based on like credentials, and we also want to pay our writers. So even before we were a nonprofit, our first event, we like found a way to pay the poets that performed, and the poets that we published, the band that played, because from, firsthand experience, we know that like a lot of writers, a lot of our labor is unpaid. It's a lot of volunteer work, and it's great work, but I mean, our labor is, we should get paid. And so that's always been part of our model, and our priority, like since the start. So that's kind of, yeah, like kind of creating our own models, but also looking to like, people that you're just like inspired by. And a lot of those people were like, DIY punk poets and writers across South Texas and Mexico.
I love that. And can you talk a little bit about the Youth Poet Laureate program, the work you all do with that,
Yeah.
when that came into play?
Yeah. So last year, we decided to launch the Hayes Youth Poet Laureate program. And so my colleague Juania lives in San Marcos, or she just moved to Seguin. But all of our programming mostly exists in San Marcos. And a part of that was, we went to the MFA program there. It's a university town, so it's very like transitory. And so I think having like a space for community that lives there felt really important to us. And especially in small towns, I mean, it's already hard enough to get the youth involved in literature in a city, but especially in a small town. And so we thought it was important to create a program that would like, it was partially workshops. We did like 2 months of workshops over Zoom that wasn't required to apply for the poet laureateship, but we encouraged it as like a way to just get your poetry into like workshop with, it was me and Wania and our other team member, Amber, just to get them thinking about poetry. We had guests come in, we had KB Brookins, we had SG Huerta, um, just to get them exposed to like, I think in high school, you're often not taught about like the cool contemporary poets a lot of times. And so that was really important to us. And so we did that last summer and had Natalia Trevino judge and pick the manuscript. And so June Pattison won that prize. And we had part of the deal was that they would win $1,000 and that they would have a lunch party. So we had that back in March and published their book. And we also did a Hayes Youth Poet Laureate anthology of the students that submitted to us but didn't win the award. And they got to read. We had Emmy Bettis read and Natalia Trevino read. So just have them in, those conversations, and they had a book signing. And it was really special. And so we're going to continue that programming. It was made possible by funding through the Birding Johnson Foundation. And so we're starting up our next program this fall where SG Huerta is going to teach a workshop on empowerment and poetry. And we just really believe in continuing that programming in San Marcos. We want to do more in Seguin, just in like, towns that are often overlooked when it comes to literary programming.
Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. Annar, what about you? The scope and mission of Ice Cream Social, has it shifted over time? Did you always kind of have a vision of what you wanted it to be, who you wanted it to serve? And did you have any models you looked to?
Yeah, just want to say, Cloud, oh my gosh, just loving just so profoundly all that you and Juani are building. So again, young 23-year-old, my vision for Ice Cream Social was initially quite short term, and I would say that I was really thrown for a loop that what I desired and was looking for in the world was something that, 40 to 50 people were also looking for each month. And, there was a community that had been born from what I can maybe describe as a little bit of a selfish desire to like connect with other people that that I just wanted to meet and be inspired by. But once we saw that it was something that had taken hold, we, the initial goal was to have a ice cream party that celebrates women writers. And over the years, so this was almost 10 years ago, my understanding of feminism since that time period, along with, I think, the global understanding of feminism, has really shaped and evolved. And there was this like really powerful moment, and these moments, they keep happening, where I have to ask myself, am I excluding people that I want to include? And so over time, I began to learn more and participate more and actively push myself to understand intersectional feminism, especially as more people in the room began to identify, either as non-binary or trans or gender fluid. And it became really hard to hang on to a mission and feel like that was true to what I wanted to actively do, which was to empower people who don't ever really get a safe, welcoming, fun space to share their work. And so I would say that our mission has evolved with our audience and with our co-hosts' desires and identities as well. And so most recently, we revamped. So we took a little break during we took a 4-year break during the pandemic, as we kind of adapted to sharing ice cream indoors during a pandemic that is ongoing. And we decided to shift our mission from it being solely for women and non-binary writers to empowering and featuring all historically marginalized identities. And that includes women, people of color, folks with disabilities, and in different socioeconomic statuses that don't typically get a platform. And so, yeah, it's been a big shift, but I also feel like the people that we want to connect with has stayed the same, except now I have the language and the grasp and the education to actually do that work.
Mhm. I love that. It, grew and evolved as you grew and evolved. That's really beautiful. And Evan, could you speak to a little bit about the scope and mission of WLT and also your personal endeavors?
Yeah, I'll start with the writing group because it's a bit smaller and it's meant to be small, which the whole goal was just to try and write something, to just devote any time I can to what I can do and to allow a space for anyone else to come and devote some period of time to what they want to do. And from there, like the word is spread around and more and more people are requesting the monthly invites. Is it because some of the invites are works of art? I like to think so. But also because people want community, they want a place that they feel will be welcoming. And so I had someone reach out, say, "Hey, is this a queer writing group?" And I was like, "Well, most of us are queer, so yes, come, please write." And soon the space just exploded out, and it. I've started. We formed a online Discord server about our writing group, and we're sharing writing opportunities and offering to look at each other's work, or even just saying, "Hey, how are you doing? Oh, congratulations on the publication." Just it's starting to build out into something that's going to be a very beautiful, beautiful thing in the future. In terms of the Writers League, the scope of that, I mean, I can of the rough history, the as it's been foretold or has been told to me, passed down orally, and I've read it somewhere, I don't know. Many years ago, over 40 years ago, the Writers League started out as a group of writers in Austin who thought, I we need community and we need writing focused programming. So they would meet monthly in someone's backyard on the third Thursday of every month, and they would chat. And they would soon they grew. More people started coming. They invite writers to come and talk to them and provide some kind of program for them to listen and hear and learn from. And it grew and grew. People they trade resources around. Eventually, they established bylaws, built a board, and became a nonprofit. And it was the Writers League of Austin, and then or the Austin Writers League. And it kept growing. People outside of Austin were traveling in to go to these backyard events, these classes that they started to put on. So they finally said, "Hey, we're reaching far outside of Austin. We're starting to move around the state with some of our programs. Let's become the Writers League of Texas." And that just kept growing and changing. With the internet came more opportunities to open up our programming. The classes went online. Pandemic really helped push a lot of the other stuff online. And we're still meeting every third Thursday to talk about something related to the craft and business of writing. We're still sharing resources. So generally, has the scope changed? Most definitely. Has the ethos changed? I don't think so. We're all just a group of people who are looking to support writers and share our resources, congratulate each other, and find other writers to talk to and connect. I saw in the chat box there was a group of 3 people sharing emails to connect right now, which it just goes to show like this is what we as an organization are about.
Yeah, that's beautiful to see. I always love watching people make connections. And I want to stick with you for this next question, Evan. As we gleaned from all of your wonderful bios, all of you serve the writing community in multiple capacities. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the work you do outside of these organizations we've been talking about. And Evan, we kind of know what that work is for you. But how do you manage the time for these passion projects? Does the work you do feed into these projects? Or is there kind of like a siloing you need to do to make things work? How do you kind of manage it all?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, that's kind of where the title by title writing group started was I needed to put something on my calendar to make myself do the work. And other people needed similar things. And that naturally brought us together to keep meeting and working. And that helped feed into other projects that I was able to start doing. And it, such as these community anthologies I listed in my bio, where we're just I met a few people online who are writing similar stuff to me. I write for tabletop role playing games, so I kind of got involved in this community online, and we all just shared a deep interest and love for the game we were working on, and just started throwing stuff together. We were just throwing around ideas until we said, "Wait a minute, we should do something." And that developed into a whole anthology of us putting work together. And generally, I am carried by my spirit of whimsy and creativity to make me complete things. And then it comes down to when I'm starting to reach that period of time where that whimsy and creativity is maybe leaving me. I look at the people I've roped in and say, I have a responsibility to finish this. And I keep carving out that time for them because other people keep me accountable for all the big things I say.
But yes, that's wonderful though that you're making the time. And Annar, I'd love to hear about the work you do with Host, and how that feeds into ice cream or feels different from ice cream, and how you kind of manage those different responsibilities.
Absolutely. So before I started working for Host Publications, Ice Cream Social was already up and running, and Ice Cream Social actually inspired. So I did Ice Cream Social a couple years, still kept it going, then was hired at Host Publications as like a social media manager and an editor. And then during that time, we were inspired by Ice Cream Social in that we were like, wow, there's so many incredible local writers that are having a hard time getting published. And so we launched the Chapbook Prize, and just kind of this mission for Host Publications, which originally published translated works, shifted to be a bit more homegrown and home-based. And so I feel like Ice Cream Social and Host Publications both kind of merged, which is why now we say Host Publications presents Ice Cream Social. And what I love about Ice Cream Social being a component for Host Publications now is that it's an extension of our mission without the intensity of making a book and publishing a book. We pay really close attention and are really intense. Cloud can maybe attest to this, where we're two editors, and we really try to make this process extremely special. And there's like an editorial process. We do the layout and design. We do all of the marketing. We coordinate with the printers. And that's all that I can remember as of this moment. But it takes about 6 months for us to do a book. And with Ice Cream Social is we can empower and spotlight and introduce our community to writers that we really want to like listen to and celebrate without this 6 month process that requires a lot of labor and funding to see into the world. So yeah, to me at this point, they're extremely linked, and I feel very lucky to do both. And yeah, it's just another way to continue to celebrate writers that I just want to see out in the world. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was curious about when they fully merged. And the chapbooks y'all make, the books you all make are incredible. And I believe you're open for submissions right now, right?
Yes, we are shifting to full length for this submissions period. So we're looking for full length poetry manuscripts and full length short fictions. That can be short story collections or novellas. And yeah, we're open through October 15th. Our reading fee is $15. But if that is something that, if that fee presents a hardship, just shoot us an email, no questions asked. Yeah, it was a complicated back end thing. Yeah, I'm confusing myself now with submittable because the back end is a little bit of a nightmare, but
It really is. The front end too, if we're being honest.
yeah. Yeah, so if you're sitting on a manuscript and you align with our mission, send us your work. We are really excited. We're going to be reading in the winter, so I'm like daydreaming about maybe wearing a sweater and reading manuscripts. So please make that come true for me.
Yes, definitely manifesting that cold weather and the great manuscripts.
Yes.
Claude, I'd love to hear from you, how kind of your work in other capacities, how you whether it feeds into your work with Infrarrealistas or you keep it siloed, and how you kind of manage all the different things you do to serve the writing community.
Yeah, just to speak to the beauty of Host Publications chapbooks. This was my book that came out with Host, and Annar did the cover and layout, and it's beautiful. Highly recommend submitting and working with Annar and Claire because it's like the best process I could have imagined. And I just felt really lucky to work with them and be published by them. So and I'm just happy to know them as people too. But and Ice Cream Social, like that's how I first met Anar, and how I was able to get published was just through those opportunities. Reading there, being in the anthology, Anar being like, "Do you have other work? Are you working on a manuscript?" And one thing led to another, and I'm just very thankful for experiences like that. Like again, like meeting writers at open mics and events like those is so like crucial, and also is just like a good way to like stay optimistic. I feel like about the state of the world is like just connection with other writers and people like doing the work that you're doing too, and you feel like you're part of something bigger. And that's how I always felt at Ice Cream. And in terms of like Infrarrealista and my own work, I do a lot of freelance design on the side, cover design, book layout. And so that definitely feeds into IR and what we do. And I kind of do their socials and any graphic design needs that we are needing in any capacity. I'm like, self-appointed art director, basically. But it's like what I like to do. And, my um the co-founder slash bestie, co-bestie, Wania, had a baby 2 years ago, Artie. And so really like in that process, like we've figured out that like Infrarrealista needs to like fit into our lives. And so some periods are slower, some, we have a lot going on. For the past year, we had like a commitment of like every last Friday we would have a open mic in San Marcos. And so that was like, the one time we would see each other. She was often traveling and, you know, um, taking care of Artie. And so we were, if anything else, like if we didn't get like that much done during the month, we would at least have that one event. And so we just try to figure out ways to like, we don't want to like overcomplicate it. We stick to like, what we are committed to. But we also understand like if, something's going on, like we can kind of fill in for each other um and also like in terms of like who we publish and like writers that we meet, a lot of times it comes organically, like we're like, bro, I found out about this amazing writer. We should ask them to submit. A lot of like that process is just through like going to open mics and connecting with writers in the community, asking them about like if, they have any work that they want to publish with us. Very much that. And I feel like it's all connected. Like it's like, we'll have an idea for something. We often call them our hangouts, like our brainstorming sessions, because we realize like if we try to work in person with each other, like it's not very productive. And so we're like, okay, like let's just hang out and have a brainstorming session where we come up with ideas. Um, and then we'll do like the harder, like more minutia work over Zoom. And that's like worked for us. But um, yeah, I think just like finding those connections, meeting these people has like all kind of fed into like what info release that is, getting inspired by like different websites we see or organizations, like, oh, I want to do this, or like, oh, we should collaborate with this person. It all kind of feeds into like the work that we do. So it feels like just very connected to, yeah, the other parts of my life, the design, the writing, all of that.
Oh, that's great. What you mentioned, going to readings being so crucial. What other advice would you give to someone who's currently kind of in looking for a community? And maybe just looking for like that one, bestie that they'll eventually start something with. What advice would you give that person?
Yeah, I think, it's hard, especially if, you're neurodivergent, if, going to social gatherings is like hard. Thankfully, one of the good things to come out of the pandemic is having like more virtual readings. Social media too is like a great way to like connect to people. That's what I was doing back in like high school when I didn't go out anywhere, I didn't drive. I just had my Tumblr and my like little 3,000 followers, which was like major to me at the time. And that's honestly how I started Chiflada Zine was like, I was like, I'm just gonna ask all my like Tumblr friends to submit that I know are creative and Latinas. And the like co-founder of that zine too happened to live in San Antonio, but we met over Tumblr and created that community and then became friends in real life and did all these projects together. Um, so I think, for the good and the bad, like social media can be like a really positive effect in that way of like just connecting with other writers that have similar interests. Going to like community open mics, I think like the big part is just like showing up and like you become like a face in that crowd and like that community when you keep on showing up to the same events and people recognize you. You eventually connect, taking classes at places like Writers League. It just is a way to like expand your community and um, a way to like kind of bridge with other writers, other poets. We're all a little socially awkward sometimes. So I think, knowing that and be like, okay, like it's chill. These are my people and finding that one connection and, going from there is always, I feel like the way that I've gone about the process.
Hmm. Yeah, I love like what you said about, continuing to go. Because it may not, you may not hit it off with everyone the first time, or you may not even talk to everyone the first time you go, or talk to anyone the first time you go. But if you keep going, it starts to feel more comfortable. Um, Anar, what about you? What advice would you give to someone who's really looking for a community right now?
Yeah, Cloud, you really nailed it. Yeah, I will say that as a event host and a curator and someone reading submissions, when you start seeing a face and you start seeing a name and it's in your system, then it becomes really easy to, like, for me to be like, have we met before? Like, I'll come up as kind of a little bit more extroverted to some folks that I'm like, I've seen you before. Thanks for coming back. Or I read your poem online and it was really awesome. It makes it so much easier when you see someone's face more often and their name. And yeah, something, if you've been to Ice Cream Social, something that I always joke about on the stage too is like, we're all here on a Friday night listening to poetry. So already the gap between the people in the room and everyone outside of the room, it's like, if you aren't going to be best friends, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, we're all cut from the same cloth if we're here on a Friday night. And so I do encourage folks to introduce themselves and connect with each other, because it's just such a special crop of people that come to a reading and want to participate and want to connect. And yeah, it's already just like kind of reminding folks, hey, like, the playing field is even. Like, chat with anyone, share book recommendations, hang out. And I do try to create like a networking buffer, and I hope and believe that other event coordinators are kind of doing the same, where there's some pockets of time where you're encouraged to meet the people around you. But I also understand that, like, it's really hard and it's anxiety inducing, sometimes, to meet new people, and yeah, just keep showing up, and then you just slowly infiltrate the group. And yeah. Other than that, yeah, I would say, I know these are all kind of extroverted things, but like, send an email to a writer whose book you appreciated, because I'm positive that they will appreciate it. And boost events of writers in your community, show up, attend, buy people's books. Like, there's so many ways to make genuine connections with other people that can have like a really profound impact. And yeah, I think that might be, I mean, Cloud, you really got a great scope of how to meet writers in your community. I think that's all I've got for now.
Oh, that's beautiful. I do like, I just want to say, like, I started going to Ice Cream Social. I just moved back to Austin from New York, where I went to grad school, and was just so amazed that there was not an ounce of pretension. And just it was the most welcoming space I'd been in. And that comes from the top, that comes from the organizers putting that intention in. And so I just want to thank you for creating that space. It was exactly what I needed. And yeah, just really a beautiful thing to behold. And I think that's a good thing to point out is like, hey, we're all in this space because we already have something in common. You're at a writing event because you're interested in writing. And so it's already built in the connection. And that, I think alleviating anxiety is difficult, but just keeping that on the back of your mind. You're kind of on the same team already. That's really well said.
Thank you.
And Evan, I'd love to hear from you the advice you would give to someone who's looking for the writing community. I know a few things off the top of my head, but I want to let you say them.
Yeah. Well, I really want to reiterate what Cloud said about show up. And it doesn't even have to be in person. You can show up online for any, say you join a Facebook group, post in that Facebook group about something you like, or if you find a niche interest of yours, like share about it, talk about it. And other people who follow that thing will start to recognize who you are. And connection can come from anywhere. The advice I want to share though is particularly that community doesn't have to be a big thing. It can one day be a big thing, but it can start with between you and another person. It doesn't, anyone can start something and have it grow big over time, but it always will start with a person or a couple people or a small group. Um, and it just involves you needing to say yes and putting other people, um, not ahead of yourself, put like being open to other people and supporting them over you sometimes. I had the phrase pop in my head of being selfishly altruistic, where like, yes, of course, buy their book. Of course, send an author you love an email because you know what? If you're the kind of person who is trying to do something for yourself, who wants to be supported by a community, the best way to get supported by a community is to support other people's communities, and then they will want to support you as well. That's sometimes where I go, is just thinking like, well, what do I get out of this? What I get out of helping someone else is maybe one day I'll be helped. And I think that is what you need to keep in mind is that if you want to find a group of people that will help you, you should go out ready to help others. Um, and that can be anything big or small. It could be sending a very kind note. It could be um, if you're part of a group of indie published authors and someone saying, "Oh, I'm looking for a book that is like kind of about this," and you're like, "My friend wrote something like that. Let me share the Kindle link." Wow, you just helped someone. You maybe sold a book for your friend. And maybe your friend will remember that, or maybe the person who bought that book will see your name, see writer next to it, and say, "Huh, I wonder what this person writes as well." Anything can happen. The world is such a big, confusing place that things will just occur. Community will find you as long as you're open to it. Um, there's kind of a lot of words I said about a lot of different topics, but really it's just you have to be open, right?
Mhm. 100%. I think I've found you get out what you put in, which I think is
Mhm.
exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Well said. Thank you, Evan. And I do want to just plug our One Page Salon is a fantastic reading series that we have built in time to connect, and it's first Tuesday of every month at radio. I mean, turning into a really cool literary, I mean, Texas has always been a very cool literary space, but I just really admire like everything everyone's doing in different pockets of the state. Definitely the folks we have assembled here are doing incredible work. But okay, I have one more question and then we'll jump to the Q&A. So we just gave some advice to folks who are looking for that community. Say someone has their co-organizer, they think they want to start something. What advice would you go back and give yourself at the beginning of your projects? Or what advice would you give someone who's thinking of taking that leap and starting their own literary organization? Cloud, we'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think two things that come to mind immediately are, I think oftentimes, you know, there is a desire to like want to start something from scratch, despite there being other organizations that are doing what you want to do. And so I think looking to those organizations first and seeing if there's ways to get involved with them before, like, say you wanted to start like organization that focuses on, literature in Texas or writers in Texas. There's so many organizations that do that. What is going to make your organization stand out from those other orgs? What are you providing that these other orgs aren't providing? Is it, a certain part of Texas? Is it a certain demographic of writers? So I think keeping that in mind and like the mission, and then also I think like really thinking about like, okay, you know, the person that you're working with, whether it is a bestie or an acquaintance, really think about like what skills you are both bringing to the table. Oftentimes I love working with friends, but it also, um, that comes with like sometimes that stress can transfer into like the personal and like it can get messy in terms of boundaries and like what's professional and what's like personal. And so really thinking about that before you're jumping into like filing a nonprofit and doing all these financial things together. Just keeping those considerations in mind, I feel like is definitely something to consider when you're thinking about starting an org. Um, yeah, so I think just really looking at other orgs that are doing the work that you want to do, volunteering with them, seeing if there's a way to get into there first. And if they're not doing what you want to do, then I think that's like a good reason to start something new. But yeah.
Oh, those are really, really good salient points. Yeah. What are you doing that's different? What are you offering that's not already offered? And definitely those clear boundaries and roles. That's
Yes.
really good. Anara, do you have anything to offer? I mean, to add, sorry. Of course you have
Yeah.
something to
Just to restate, Cloud's expressing like to really consider who you're going to be partnering with. So I feel really lucky that I've gotten a chance to work with Chandra Madha, and Claire Bowman is my co-editor and the new co-host for Ice Cream Social. And yeah, I feel very, very lucky and very fortunate that those two people that I collaborate with are two people that I love and respect. But at the same time, I didn't think about the longevity of Ice Cream Social, for instance. And so I didn't ever get a chance to consider my own boundaries, consider that every fourth Friday for 5 years, I was going to be in this exact same spot. So I had not prepared for declining a trip or a wedding, or like, what if I was ill? There was all of these like limitations that when you commit to something, it hadn't occurred to me that I might need a day off, like, or I might need a month off. And so as much as I really enjoyed and still enjoy Ice Cream Social this time around, that now that we've revamped, I have an alternate in place, and really incredible communication with my co-host, have personal boundaries. And that includes, now we have community guidelines that we express and we share. And yeah, we're approaching things in a bit more mature of a way, for the sake of my health, the health of my co-host, and the health of everyone that is in our community. And so in addition to that, like, oh my gosh, I've learned so much. I would also highly recommend having templates, and having like as much as you can have automated. So now with our our posters, I'm just changing the name and the color of the poster, of our featured readers. And so that's gonna change every month just a little bit, but not a new flyer every month. For me, that became really taxing in the past. And then we have our standard invitation emails, and we have forms that is the same form every month, where we can gather all of our author information in one place, and just being as organized as possible so that you can just copy, paste, personalize a little bit, but be ready to go, has been such a huge time saver this time around. And so, yeah, that's kind of a dorky answer, but it's like, yeah, make this as make the unfun parts of organizing and emailing as streamlined as possible. But yeah.
Oh, you're speaking my language. Yes. I love process. I love automation. Yes. And I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself. And that's really, really good advice for anyone who's going into something, to make sure you're prioritizing yourself, your mental health and your physical health. So I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you.
Evan, what advice would you give to folks who are looking to start something?
Yeah, I definitely agree with look at who you're wanting to organize with. Look at where you can maybe start automating and streamlining your processes. I definitely feel that I'm still very on the early stages, still within a year of this writing group. And I've soon found myself in the space of one, I'm making custom invites every month of just kind of outrageous ideas and scope. And then I found myself now, I where I was once sending this invite to 3 people, now I have to send it to a dozen people. And same for my co-organizer. So one of the things we did for that is we found an online space to organize outside of when we physically meet. So like we created a Discord server because that's what works for us. So now when I need to send an invite, I can just drop it in a Discord server, add everyone, and then they can see that. And that makes the inviting process a lot easier. But I mean, consider scope, really, because things that I have been part of community organized wise has been they've seen delays because I have chose something of a larger scope or worked with something of a larger scope, and by nature of working with several people, it delays will happen. People will not turn in things on time. People will have life stuff happen, and that's what it, understanding. If you want stuff to occur, pick a simple scope. So when I created the writing group, the scope was simple. Let's show up at this one day between these hours, and if you come when you'd like, leave when you'd like, but just try to do some writing and just as simple as possible, make it as easy as possible. Just come up and try to do something. Um, and that's the advice I would do. Just think about your scope and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And there's beauty in the simplicity of that scope and sticking to it. So I have a question here in the Q&A section for Annar. Annar, how did you promote the ice cream social?
Yeah, so because we partnered with Malvern Books, there was kind of already a built-in promotional component. Back then, we did radio ads, so that was always exciting to hear. You'd be surprised how many people are listening to the radio on the way home. And so we were playing ice cream social ads on KUTX. Other promotional avenues are posting in the Austin Chronicle, but I will not ever sneeze at this very specific promotional strategy that we use for Ice Cream Social, which is to diversify our lineups in as many ways within our mission statement as possible. So something that we would like to do is have a more established writer with like a larger reach, maybe has published a book or is teaching, and then like an emerging writer in there as well, and kind of bringing people with maybe similar themes to kind of bring it all together, but different crowds. So maybe bringing someone from like, we're in a university town, like from the University of Texas and from Texas State, kind of in the same lineup. And so you would have these readings where you would have MFA students from maybe three or four different schools in the same space and in the same open mic. And so, yeah, just having really thoughtful, really mindful lineups. And then another strategy we would use is having our authors recommend someone to join them for the reading in which they're being featured. And that gets people really excited and, making fun graphics. They'll post those online. All their friends will come out. So it's always really, really fun to get other people excited about being a featured reader and wanting to post and share. And especially now, social media has really evolved in 5 years. So I'm having a lot of fun seeing, I don't think we had Instagram stories back then. So it's been really fun to see people share that far and wide as well.
Yeah. Cloud, how about you? How do you promote your in-person readings?
Yeah, that's a very important aspect of programming is the promotion. And I think social media, it sometimes feels like you're just shouting into a billion other events and flyers and like there's so much going on and I think word of mouth is really important. And a lot of times for example, for this, we're having a reading in Seguin featuring the Hayes Youth Poet Laureate next Saturday. And so we just like old school, like printed out flyers and like put them around town. We also try to promote them in the Caldwell Hayes Examiner, called the CHE for short. We have like a relationship with them where we have a section. IR has like a 3-page spread where we publish book reviews and some poems and fiction. And we also try to promote like our events in advance. It gets printed like the first of the month. So we try to like really get like the posters out there and like the copy and everything. And they're put into like coffee shops around Hayes County and Caldwell County in hopes that, people read them and see our events. We've had our readings at Coffee Bar in San Marcos for the past year. And so, once we establish like, okay, same date, or same time, same place every month, people started coming. We also just like, Juanita likes to call herself like, a pusher. She takes pride in like just like, pressuring our friends sometimes, not like in a shameful way, but just in a like, come on, like we're gonna read out here. I'd love to see y'all, etc. And so I think just having people like that is very helpful because I'm usually like, I'm very not like that a lot of times. So having a pusher in your life really helps in your organization that is like willing to just like, be out there. Those are kind of the ways that we've been going about it.
Oh, I love that y'all are doing paper flyer. That feels like very like in communication with your origins, like the zine origins.
Yes.
I've been having the desire to, do paper things. That sounds cool. And your art is, Annar put that in the chat, but your posters and your art is really beautiful.
Thank you.
They're very beautiful posters. So there was I think there was I do want to respond to this. There's a question in the chat. What advice would you give to someone who's kind of writing community was disbanded or they have to or kind of having to start over? Do we have any sort of like motivation for them, Evan? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because having a community like that, like it is a relationship in your life, even if it's like if it's with a lot of people, it's a kind of breakup, even if that's not the I could see in this story here that it was an outside force that broke up the writing group. It, I think, really how to recover from that could mean a lot of things. It probably depends on the details of the story, but it might just mean if this didn't work, you try again and change something that may have led it to fall apart. Um, but maybe you need time to recover because that is a loss of relationship, and you need to emotionally accept that and feel that.
Well, thank you. That was well said. Yeah, stick with it, I think is definitely once you've had some time to process, definitely give it another go and don't give up. Where can we find you next and support your work? Just to close us out, when's the next event we can come to and how can we support you if we're not in the area? Cloud.
Yeah, I can go. So best way to support us, I would say, is just to read our work. We get published in the Caldwell Hayes Examiner every month. But if you're not in those counties, we also have a website. I'm going to drop that in the chat right now. We have a lot of different programming. So we have youth programming. We're working on doing some like adult writing workshops in the works down the line. Also just like buying our books. So far through our press, we only have one, which is Amapola Song by Jacinto Jesus Cardona. It's also my father, an elder Chicano poet. But we're coming out with a new collection, poetry, next year called Peppermint by Amber Isaac. Our next event is going to be in Seguin on Saturday, the 28th. And after that, we'll have an event in San Marcos. Following us on Instagram, just to keep up with us as well. Also going to put that in the chat. Yeah, I think just sharing our work, reading our book reviews, sharing our flyers, and buying our literature is always the best way to go.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing those in the chat. Annar, what about you?
Yeah, sorry, I sent that link while you were talking, Cloud. I don't know how to use just the computer at all. So yeah, if you're in Austin, join us for Ice Cream Social. Our upcoming event is on September 27th. We're featuring Deb Olin Unferth, Isra Chima, and Marlon Hedrick. We also have some open mic slots, so come a little early. And the ice cream flavors we're serving, salted caramel and Rocky Road, and as always, a vegan flavor, but I just show up to Amy's and buy what they have. It's always good. And if you love books and you love to read and you want to support a local press, shop at hostpublications.com. We pack our books and we pack them really lovingly. And if you are a writer and you have some writing that you're sitting on and our mission statement and what we do resonates with you, consider submitting through our submittable here. And yeah, that's a lot. I'm excited to connect with y'all. Follow us on Instagram at Host Publications or at Ice Cream Social and stay in touch.
Amazing. And Evan, where can we find J. Evan Parks in the future and how can we support you?
Well, I'll say I'll be at pretty much every Writers League event. Maybe in the background as I usually am, as opposed to here talking right now. Wow. funny one. But I peer around. If you're interested in tabletop role playing games, you can find my work by searching it. I right now only have a few things out there. I've been a part of a couple anthologies. I have a few things forthcoming still, but you know what? I write fun games. Go out and play them if you like to.
Awesome. And I do want to say that Writers League of Texas will be at radio on October 1st for our one-page salon. And we have all kinds of great online programming coming up this fall. And I just want to say thank you all, Annar, Cloud, Evan, for being here, sharing about your organizations, all the incredible work you're doing. I'm so honored that you chose to spend this evening with us. And I'm so happy to continue to support your work and to see where things go from here. And thank you all that on the Zoom for joining us. Thank you all on the YouTube live stream for tuning in. Yeah, just thank you all so much for spending your Thursday evening with us. This was a really lovely conversation, and I'm so glad to be working and in the literary community with y'all at the same time. So yeah, y'all have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.